Can I say one thing? Maybe what we can do is go in order of the questions, if that's possible. So Ezio first, Paul Husser second, Emmanuel third. It'll make it easier to keep it all straight, I think. Jordan 4. How did this get switched around? Sorry. I screwed it up already. Never mind. We'll figure it out. I screwed it up. I was reading the bios first. Doesn't matter. Paul, nice to meet you. We haven't formally been introduced.
Pleasure.
So thank you to the 6 of you for joining. I'm going to move this a little bit and let you. So what we have prepared, I will give the bio of the individual, ask them the question, and then we will allow time for 1 or 2 others to comment on that response, and then we'll move on to a new question with a new bio, a new introduction. And then we will have time at the end for audience questions and audience comments on existing questions that we pose. So certainly our theme is applying innovation in the capital. So I have my timer too, so we stay on time, but I think we're doing good for time, aren't we, Jerry? Great. So we're going to start with Mr. Hayes. Mr. James Hayes, we know from a good presentation a bit about his bio already, but just to familiarize you again, he's coming at us from research with Carleton at SIMS at a very advanced level, 3D printing, CNC routing, robotic milling, Parliament buildings. I think we saw the caliber here. And thank you for sitting in for Stephen Fye, who had to run for his double booking. And he couldn't have picked a better candidate to be able to answer this question, which is our academic question of the night. How do you define innovation? And can the use of BIM tools and processes be qualified as innovative?
Yes, sorry, are these on? Is it on? Okay. Anybody that knows Steve knows that double booking is not that uncommon. But thanks for the opportunity to fill in for Steve. And yes, my academic answer is in the time that I realized that I would be doing, in the time that I realized that I'd be sitting on this panel, I did some quick research into the academic side of innovation. Yeah, I had about 3 hours to come up with this. I will read this kind of academic definition and then try to apply that into BIM. So this is a definition defined by several authors who probably nobody here has ever heard of, but Crossan and Apheiden. Innovation is production or adoption, assimilation, and exploitation of a value-added novelty in economic and social spheres, renewal and enlargement of products, services, and markets, development of new methods of production, and establishment of new management systems. It is both a process and an outcome. Again, that obviously is not my personal definition, but I think there's a lot of things that we can extract from that definition. And arguably, the most important, I think, is that very last statement, which is it is both a process and an outcome. And in the world of BIM, I think that the short answer is that it could be innovation, the use of BIM and BIM related tools. But I do think that the idea of innovation as a process is where this definition hinges, and that I think from a technological perspective, 100% BIM can be considered innovation, but as Omar had spoke about, and many people in here might be aware of, how BIM is implemented, things like project delivery methods, contractual obligations, liability, whether it is being a part of the procurement process, all of these things are kind of defining whether the practice of BIM is an innovative thing more so than the technology. There is if anybody's ever heard of Guy Kawasaki, he was one of the first marketing experts at Apple in the 80s. And he talks about the innovation curve. So anybody that's looked at innovation, there's kind of an S curve as something that's innovative. It starts, there's not much pickup, and then as more and more people pick it up, it ramps up, and then it kind of plateaus. And then there's a subsequent S curve that follows behind that with a new technology or a new innovative system. And what he advocates for kind of the most beneficial kind of innovation is not to be the person following along on that curve, but to start that new S. So you jump from one innovation curve to a new innovation curve. And I would argue that the difference between CAD and BIM is definitely a jump to that new curve, but whether or not a kind of existing building culture is allowing enough people to jump to that curve, I think is probably the question. That answer.
Very thoughtful. Would anyone like to elaborate further or offer up their opportunity for how do you define innovation, and does BIM count as innovative?
I might jump in for a definition. I mean, to me, and I'm come more from a municipality background, and to me, innovation is taking a brilliant solution from creative and unique ideas to create a value, and that value has to have merit and an economic benefit or a value to your clients and to your users. And to me, that is innovation. Can BIM provide that to projects? Absolutely, I think. And I think so therefore it does classify as innovation, but it needs to be done effectively and efficiently. And that's all part of that S-curve that was mentioned earlier in terms of how one comes forward with the solutions.
Very good. Ezio. So we heard from you as well, familiar with your bio. Thank you again for the presentation. It was great to see. You are responsible for delivering some of the country's largest and most complex heritage rehabilitation projects. And as we saw here, it's a pleasure to see a lot of that, the visibility of the projects, because it resonates with all of us. It is our Parliament building, so there's a lot of pressure there. And I think it's no surprise, you mentioned a little bit in your talk about the challenges of getting things done in government. My question to you, or our question to you, so this is a government town. How can government clients, like yourself, who have the reputation of being about 10 years behind industry, technologically speaking, at least, enable applied innovation on projects?
First of all, I agree that government tends to be lagging behind when it comes to technology, perhaps even innovation. I think that's changing. Certainly in our shop, that's changing. As I mentioned in my presentation, we are putting forward a number of innovative processes and techniques. Partnering with the university here, partnering with a number of universities across the country to use for the use of technology, whether it's for seismic testing or some of the work that has been provided to you in my presentation and in James's presentation as well. Mine is a project management shop, so I guess my assessment of that always comes from the project delivery side, and I could tell you, having delivered a number of these large projects, I think we've come a long way, but there's more to be done. There's no question about that. We at the Parliamentary Precinct, we are moving to a campus approach to how we're going to manage the projects and the campus, and I think that there's a need and the desire to use more and more technology We're looking for it. Everything from building, as I mentioned, rooms where clients will be able to walk into that room and use technology to actually visualize their spaces. These will be tremendous benefits and tremendous assets, I think, to not only to us, but to our clients, the Senate, House of Commons, and Library of Parliament, and so on. So again, definitely huge push from the parliamentary precinct specifically in terms of the use of technology, and we, for the Centre Block, for instance, we are going to an integrated project team approach. I think that when you bring people together as well, you also help to sort of spawn ideas and bring information on these technologies to the table, which will allow us to assess and potentially use them.
Excellent. John, do you want to jump in on that one? National defense?
I tend to agree with the vision of us implementing something innovative in technology. Am I on here? It's a long play. Being national defense, we are very innovative behind closed doors, but to interact with technology and stuff like BIM, it's a very long play, and we have to take a really long view. And so when new innovative things pop up, it's really hard for us to do that implementation. So I do have to agree with Ezio.
I would just add as well that all the great things that you see happening at SIMS are made largely, a lot of it is made possible by the federal government. And so, you can argue again that they are lagging behind in certain technologies or whatever, but they obviously have the foresight and innovative thinking to provide funding to places like SIMS to do the innovative work.
Excellent. Emmanuel. So Emmanuel van Rooten is a director at Moriyama Tashima. She's a steering committee member representing the REIC at the Institute for BIM in Canada. She has worked as a project architect, a project manager, now director, has worked on really high visibility projects locally, such as the Canadian War Museum, the delegation of the Ismaili Imamat, I hope I said that right, yeah. Carleton University River Building on campus, Beaverbrook District Library, as well as the Visitor Welcome Center that we saw a couple of times now with the IBI group, and the Canada History Hall renovation. She works in the firm with their strategic planning. She's been a director for the National Capital Region, as well as regional director for Ontario North East and Nunavut for the REIC. And she does contribute a lot to the Israeli School of Architecture here at Carleton. It's her alma mater, and does that via being a studio lecturer, a professional practice lecturer, and a frequent guest critic to the student projects. So, Emmanuel, it's really a pleasure to have you here on the panel.
Thank you.
Question for you.
Yep.
With all of that project experience, can you describe your experience or your view on the role that collaborative project delivery methods and partnership contract types have in enabling innovation?
Sure. Thank you for your question. I'm happy to be here today. So my perspective is really from a practice perspective of running projects from beginning to end, so from design to construction. So I see BIM in the kind of the light of the process of how you actually start a project and develop it. And I've kind of spanned from the CAD to the BIM, so I don't get my hands dirty anymore in BIM, unfortunately. But I oversee projects that use the BIM tool or the BIM collaboration method. So certainly it's really changed the dynamic of how we work in the practice. It's created really a much more collaborative team environment between ourselves and especially the consulting engineers who are part of our team. And I think that's really opened up a lot of opportunities. As well, a lot of opportunities working across platforms, as well integrating other types of 3D modeling softwares, especially when we talk about complex forms. So a lot of innovation is, number one, I'd seen the communication across the team. We've had, traditionally a lot of the complaints that we've received from clients has been questions of coordination, but now a lot of those issues are going away because we see everything in 3D and simultaneously live across offices. Another major innovation has been really the notion of the kind of 3D modeling and the experience with complex forms. So, for instance, on the Canada History Hall, if you go and see the renovation that we did, that major ramp that's around an oval is a complex form. It's a kind of an impossible geometric form that couldn't have been done with, or would have been very challenging without a kind of a 3D modeling approach. So BIM's really kind of opened up that aspect, and in particular that project, it was actually tied to manufacturing as well. So it was tied to production of CLT manufacturing. So again, all CNC technologies. So it's great when you see that those kind of very challenging forms that used to be very difficult in a kind of a 2D world being transferred into technologies that then go from our office into production and construction. So, I mean, I guess I see two aspects to the innovation: the innovation internally within the office, and then how that innovation then starts to translate into the construction world. And what we've seen to date, at least in our office, has been a lot of the use of the 3D model for the construction managers, the costing, the scheduling, the phasing, and a bit less into the manufacturing process. So I think there's a lot of innovation to be done there, and a lot of innovation to be done in terms of how that model moves through from our hands into the construction processes. And that goes back to James, I think your comment about delivery methods, and I think your comment about the how people actually collaborate together if you go in an IPD format contract, or if you go within the traditional form contract. So if you look at your kind of traditional form of contract, basically the risk, why it works well in the office is because the risk is all shared amongst consultants, but then the risk gets transferred to the contractor. And so the model, as you transfer it, can you actually transfer it and they use it, or can they not use it? And that becomes, right now, I think, an obstacle. So the notion that everything's about a risk transfer as opposed to a risk sharing model, which is the IPD model, I think has a big impact of how that innovation is actually going to play out into the construction world, if that makes any sense.
That was great.
Anyway.
Yeah, so I would tend to agree with everything that you just said, because I've actually seen it and lived it in France, especially where we started launching our product. And literally the biggest concern they had is how do we bring a 3D model to someone on the field, and how do we collaborate with them. This is where the process exists, and putting it in place is important. And now people are seeing that and moving toward that, and people need to keep realizing, exactly that the process is there, the process makes sense, it needs to be applied now, and we need innovation to bring us there, to bring us to a stage where we can actually apply it to everybody on the spectrum.
And that's where I guess the contract delivery model is really important, because if we look at the new contract language for the BIM model, the notion is that we as architects were responsible for what we designed, and then we transfer that over. And I think traditionally that's not been the case, and we need to sort of change the culture around that and understand even how it impacts our internal processes within offices.
Great, thank you. John Hale. John is Chief CAD BIM for the Department of National Defense. He's got 22 plus years being active in developing, implementing and managing CAD, GIS, and BIM applications for AEC and real property within the federal government of Canada. He's an active member of many industry organizations and interest groups related to the implementation of BIM in Canada. He's the current chair of the Operations Committee of Building Smart Canada and sits on the steering committee for the Institute for BIM in Canada. John's current focus is on implementing the D&D Real Property Spatial Information Management Framework. I think that does fit on a business card, but just. Which will steer the integration of master real property spatial data with master business data while enabling enterprise-level building information modeling tools and processes. So that in and of itself is not an easy feat, and it's been consuming your life for a little while now. So when anyways, kudos to you for sticking through with that. The question we have for you, what role do standards play in advancing the industry?
I didn't get a chance to prep because I didn't know what the question was. So standards, I'd say it's a really big question. Just going back 10 years in my career in national defense, I was kind of dropped the implementation of BIM on my lap. Oh, can you hear me? And closer. So one of the bigger things we realized is actually we drank the Kool-Aid. Like, we were all in. We thought BIM was cool, 3D modeling, and we started putting advanced requirements into our contracts. And after a couple years and a couple projects going, really good during design, and the model kind of staying there and going through construction, we realized that, holy crap, wait, this advanced Revit model coming at us, that's cool. Now what? And we are a fairly large organization, National Defense. We have about 22,000 buildings in our inventory. And over the last couple of years, we went through the centralization process. So there's one custodian for all these buildings. And we started looking at how do we get these advanced requirements together for the data so that we can get something and harvest it for, during those design and construction process, and bring it back and doing something in O&M. And really that's where the value of the standards really start kicking in. And I think we're still at the nascent stage. We're realizing that, we industry, we really need to work together collaboratively, understand how to apply the standards, not just during, certain aspects of the project, during design, not just across the life of a project, but across projects, or right across multiple projects and right across the life cycle of your asset. And I think in your new role, Sue, you're probably starting to get into that role as well. And our biggest challenge is what we're getting, really cool things delivered from a modeling environment. It doesn't mean a lot when you're getting, the typical model and a set of as-builts coming from construction, that, there's a heck of a lot of information there, but it's not the same information that we need to deliver to manage the asset for its life cycle. Finance wants something else. We need something different for facilities management. How do we get that from the model? And I think that's one of the bigger questions. And really to solve that, we have to look at the whole entire elongated process, and we need more rigorous process and standards. I do believe IPD is a really big part of it. Like, it's a different, shared risk reward during delivery of a project, but at the end of the day, it depends on the information standards that we do apply, how we get the information flowing during the requirements gathering, during the construction and design phase, back into O&M. And I think, we still need to learn a lot, but to me, that's the overall, what's BIM, with the standards behind BIM are really the cornerstone.
Well, if I may, I think that's, it's a really good point in the sense that we need to develop standards so that we know what bar is our kind of standard delivery bar to achieve, so that across offices, our clients are well served in the sense that there's a standard of quality, and when the model does get transferred to the contractor, there will be a standard of quality that they should expect. And if we can all establish what that line means in the industry, I think it'll be very helpful for us, because I think right now we're still in that kind of phase of searching, what is that bar?
And possibly on top of that, you're right. I think we need to have standard sets of documents that can be used for procurement purposes. It clearly defines what those roles, what those responsibilities are, and who's providing what in regards to the whole production behind it. Because we clearly have that now for hiring architects, for hiring contracts with the CCDC, the OEA, Doc 600, and I think this needs to start coming on board in addition to that.
Well, that's a good segue to introduce Paul Hesser.
Oh, thank you.
City of Ottawa, Program Manager for the Central Library Development, Design and Construction Branch, Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development Department, City of Ottawa. That's a long name.
A little bit.
Yeah. So Paul is a Program Manager for the City of Ottawa in the Design and Construction Branch of Infrastructure Services. During Paul's 28 years with the city, he has overseen the design and construction of significant civic facility infrastructure, from recreation complexes to transit facilities. Paul is currently dedicated to the Ottawa Central Library project that is destined to be a pivotal landmark facility in the nation's capital. So welcome to our panel, Paul. I know we've heard from you already a few times.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Our question to you, how is innovation creating value for taxpayers?
Dun, dun, dun. Exceptionally good question. And my simple answer to that is very carefully. Like some of the previous answer in regards to being kind of 10 years behind in regards to technology, certainly that's where the city's at. We don't tend to be trailblazers at the city. Sad as it is, we all want to be innovative, we want to be creative, we want to have wonderful solutions. But the city in general is extremely risk adverse. And because of that, the net result is we really need to be accountable to the taxpayers from a dollar perspective, but we get highly scrutinized by the public, by the local media, and probably much more so than other levels of government here in this region. So because of that, we tend not to invest money in certain ways in regards to technology, and because of that, we tend to follow where the industry is going rather than being leaders behind it, which I think is really too bad, because I think we have lots of opportunities. The wonderful things I think we see that's going on Parliament Hill, I think is exemplary. That being said, we are following in behind. We tend to want to look for innovation in regards to how we deliver our projects. And mostly for us in the last 10 years, it's been following our green building policy to deliver sustainable buildings in a manner that can create value to taxpayers in regards to that outcome. But not only from an economic point of view, but also from a sustainability, from an economic and social benefits as well. But that being said, we are certainly looking at the Central Library project. We want to make that a highly innovative, creative, spectacular building that can truly be a landmark facility. If one can see what's happening worldwide for central libraries, it's crazy what they're doing and how revolutionizing cities that it has created. And we're looking forward to that as well. And the interesting thing that's happened is part of our whole programming aspect. When we deliver an arena, it has its set formula. And we've totally revolutionized and innovated what library services are now going to be, and how that will impact citizens in the city, I think will be great. So we need technology not only from how the building will operate, but how we're going to deliver that. And we are looking for how BIM can be highly effective in delivering this project. We're looking to how we can deliver these projects different from a construction point of view, because we're so frustrated right now in terms of how projects are being delivered, and we see the possibilities, and we really want to kind of get on board finally. So that's kind of where we're at from a city perspective.
That's great.
I fully agree with all of that, for sure. Again, my shop is a project delivery shop. It's a project management shop, and keeping costs down is the name of the game, or certainly one of the important aspects of what we do. And if we can leverage technology to help us do that, obviously this is exactly what we want. Whether it's as I mentioned earlier, allowing a client to see the space before it's actually built, so it minimizes changes. Obviously that results in lower costs. If we can use technology, for instance, to help us with investigations in buildings, Public Works, of course, or PSPC is one of the largest landlords in the country, with a huge inventory of existing buildings. So the work we do in existing buildings is far greater than any work we're doing in terms of building new facilities. So being able to carry out investigations, for instance, before you begin the project is not always simple. The buildings are usually populated with people. And if we can leverage technology to help to do that, then you reduce the number of changes down the road. So those are just a couple of examples on what we try to do and what we would like to do and push for in the future as well.
Excellent.
Totally agree with that. We have the same exact problem. We probably renovate more buildings than we do anything else. We are probably the largest builders of construction within the National Capital Region, and yeah, we need to do exactly the same things. Well put.
Thank you, gentlemen.
That's me.
So also new to our panel, thank you for joining us, Jordan. This is Jordan Janison, COO of Aries North America. He's worked in the web industry for the last 15 years. Started by doing specialized websites for the luxury industry for names like Chanel, Monet, and Chandon.
Moet et Chandon.
Voilà. Moved into security, creating the entire framework for credit card transaction for America Food and Vending. Produced a vast number of mobile apps. Then after many years of tinkering with 3D and the web, SmartShape was created and is now being deployed across the globe. So Jordan, thank you for joining us. Our question to you. So our theme here at this event is applied innovation. What needs to happen for our region to be successful at applied innovation, and are we already being successful at this in our region?
Thank you for having me. So, as you may notice in my bio, you have no idea what I actually really do, and it doesn't really matter. So to answer the question, are we applying innovation in the capital here? I want to say yes, to a certain extent. Is it successful? This is where I'm going to change the dialogue and say no. For me, innovation is not just about doing amazing things like Carlton and Algonquin are doing. Yes, they're innovative. Yes, they're bringing new tools. Here is the thing. Who are using those tools? Engineers, people in offices. What I want to see is everyone, anywhere, use the same tools, being able to use the same thing. When the printing press was invented, it was awesome, but only a few people knew how to use it. It took many, many years before everybody had a printer at their home and could print their own information. What we're seeing right now with the innovation and the way it's applied is a bit the same context. Yes, CAD has been around for a very long time now and it's well used. BIM is starting to be well used and well understood, but here is the issue with those two things. They're not used across the field because no one has been able to bridge them and to say, now I have an architect that I studied for many years on how to build a document and I'm going to have, let's say, a welder that is going to see the exact same document, going to be able to use it and going to be able to reference it without any training, just as simple as they go on Facebook. This is the nature of innovation, when you can actually bring something new to everybody, not just to the specialized. On this panel, we have a few people talking how their departments are lagging behind because they're either risk adverse or they don't have the means, they don't necessarily have the engineering. It's not necessarily their fault. It's not their core business, that's not what they're supposed to do. Here is the thing. What if you could bring them something over any kind of device and tell them, now you have access to it. You don't need to change your process. One of the big reasons why innovation is slow in BIM, even though, yes, we can do amazing stuff, is because people that are not initiated to it can't use it. I couldn't go on the street, bring as many people I have in the assembly here and tell them, use a BIM model, use a CAD model, use the BIM data. Tell me something about it that makes sense to you and that will make sense to me. This is currently not possible. And this is where my technology comes from. This is what we fix. We are bringing this capacity. Innovation is going to be driven by places like Carlton and Algonquin because they have labs that are researching specific things to solve specific issues, which once on the field bring great value. But all of this doesn't fix the elephant in the room for all the building company and everything. It's the capital cost overrun of the project that keep happening. Even though we bring more and more technology into every single project, we're seeing money slips out the windows in public projects, sadly. And as a taxpayer, to me, that pains me to see that. And I'm not really sure there is someone that's at fault either. I'm not sure you can actually point the finger at someone and say, you haven't done your job, simply because people they don't get the opportunity to collaborate. Projects have become a lot more complex in the last few years. so complex that it takes teams of engineers to work on them and teams of builders to just understand what's going on. And you're seeing all the solutions trying to do that patchwork, but at the end of the day, innovation has to bring something in your hands. A smartphone is a smartphone and is very innovative because any of you could use it. What if I tell you only 5% of you can have a smartphone now because the rest of you don't know how to use it? How would you feel about that? Would you still consider a smartphone innovative? This is a bit of the same concept inside the BIM industry. This is the same concept with CAD. Those two live together, and now they need to be brought down to absolutely everybody, seamlessly, anywhere, on any device. And this is where the success is going to be, because once you can bring the people that work together at every level on a project and understand what they're doing, see what they're doing, this is when the absolute goal of the goalpost for innovation is that. As simply as that. It's for everybody to use it. You know, it's not for a select few to use it. It's for everyone. And when we reach that, then I'll be able to say, yes, we're using it fully. We're not just doing some R&D and really awesome stuff and cool stuff, and we're bringing value. But when everybody can use it, then we'll see collaboration that we mentioned multiple times work a lot better. Once collaboration works a lot better, guess what? Time frames are going to go down. People are going to work better together. They're going to understand. You're going to create a singular version of the truth. Instead of seeing, like we see in the newspaper, X is fighting with X because they said they were going to bring steel. They didn't bring steel. Well, maybe the guy that was supposed to bring the steel was sick. Maybe it could be something tragic even. And you don't see those things, you don't get those things, and that costs money. All along the way. BIM helps create a framework to help the communication and the information. The next step of innovation is to bring that into the hands of everyone.
That was exactly 5 minutes. It was very well. James, you want to?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a great summary of innovation, and I agree that communicating the information from one group to another, and all these diverse groups, as you're implying, there's architects and engineers, and then there's fabricators, and there's all these different people. So, again, I think that I'd like to know more about your software, but yeah, no, I mean that is the ultimate goal, is to have something. And you know, there's people like Frank Gehry who have been experimenting with this, where you know, the intention is to, on the job site, to only have, you know, tablets and computers, but we all know that in general that, you know, that's what gets promoted, but when in reality there's paper documents and things like this. So I'm curious to see your software.
We've actually been able to change that. We've been able to do the bridge for people that used to work with paper plan. They went from the paper plant looking at the 3D object going fully on the 3D. And people crave it. I can tell you something. If someone tells you people don't understand something in 3D, let me tell you, they crave it. Because when they can see what they're doing, it goes like that. And they're like, oh my God, I know what's happening.
And if I can, I'd love to add to your comment, because my experience on site has been precisely that. There are some trades that can take the 3D model into processing, but a lot of them don't have the tools to open up the models. They don't have the training. They don't have that. So all of a sudden it kind of stops. It stops at the kind of project management level of the construction manager. It doesn't get into the trades. But I think that, yes, the 3D model, they do need to understand and visualize the space, and that really helps the process on site. I mean, there are some trades that will never need to see a model, you know, in a sense, a welder, you know, on site will not need it, but it will help, let's say, the drywaller who's putting up an element up, and to try to understand that coordination element. So, yes, the more we can get that model into the hands and more intuitive, you know, so that it is a collaboration tool that's intuitive for everybody and accessible, I think it would be an amazing thing. And the other thing is that, you know, when you think of the traditional process, everybody would take the architectural drawings, and then, you know, the curtain wall person would start to redraw their drawings. Then you would have the steel person would redraw the drawings, and then the millwork person would redraw the drawings. So every trade would take our drawings and redraw it every time. And then, you know, you'd have this tug of war fight if we actually hand over the drawings or not hand over our drawings. Do they pay our drawings or do they not pay? It's a mess. Like, if you had that information and they could use it, and instead of redrawing, you would get that efficiency that you're talking about actually saving the taxpayers money because nobody has to redraw the drawings 5 times depending on the trades. And so I think there's a lot to be done in that kind of flow between the design and the construction.
We actually see huge metrics because the product is large, and I can tell you the metrics are insane. Like you're talking double digits across the board of saving on capital project. So we're seeing the impact.
Where's Jerry? Over there. Jerry. Mr. Jerry Letman. How much time do we have for question period? Well, not that we haven't been doing questions, but from the audience. About 10 minutes. Before we get started with audience questions, Jerry Letman has put on this entire event. So let's give Jerry a round of applause. He's done a phenomenal job. If everything is going smooth, he did it. If you find any glitches, he probably didn't have enough resources.
Well, we should thank the volunteers, though.
Yes, we have a number of volunteers that have been involved.
They're all around, you can see them.
Thank you to the volunteers. So we only have 10 minutes. Budget-wise, we were doing roughly 5 minutes for each question. So it's still a decent amount of time, but we can't go crazy. What I would ask, if you have a question that you would like to ask the panel or ask the audience, if you can come up here, say who you are, say your question in a timely manner, and then you can queue so that we know, otherwise it gets a little chaotic. So I think I know our first question is coming from Daryl. Yeah. Hey, Daryl.
Thanks, Susan. So not to put Emmanuel on the spot, but it was actually very interesting the way that you had just proposed the idea that you wouldn't have to redraw and so on and so forth. And one of the things that we've always struggled with in the industry is handing over information. And so at some point we would get people to sign disclaimers, so on and so forth. And I completely agree with the idea that we should be having that exchange and not redoing. But how do we get away from the liabilities? Like how? Because we're not there yet, I don't think. But we need to catch up on a legal point of view, right? So, did everyone hear that? Okay, so from a legal standpoint, I think we need to catch up a little bit.
Yeah, and you know, honestly, I wish I had a solution. You know, the new contract language came out for the BIM model. I think the IBC, it's on the IBC website. And that says, okay, the next party can use our 3D, our BIM model with these exclusions. And so then you would have to go and detail, you know, what you can use it for. And, you know, as a director of an office, then I have to think, okay, well, is that line that, you know, correct? Is that thing, can it go out? Can it go out? And, you know, because also you're working through levels of details in your model. So can you actually ensure that every single issue's been well resolved? And I had an issue on site with that ramp because of that, because we did hand over the model and there was, because it was a complex curve, there was an issue with some of the curve issues, and so we had to resolve it on site. So I think we're not there yet, but partly because the risk model is not a shared risk model. So until you until you change that risk model, that it's not about liability of transfer and accusing each other and that kind of conflictual contractual relationship that we've been carrying on for years, until that risk model changes, I don't think we can, that model's not going to move very fast.
So I'm hearing IPD.
I mean, I don't know how else to frame it.
Yeah.
Am I hearing, sorry, IPD? Yeah, I think that's the answer. Shared risk reward, and I think how do we inform owners to be more knowledgeable on the subject? And I do believe CCDC does have an IPD contract format now, and I know D&D we're about to enter into one on a significant size, and I think that shared risk reward and that shared environment and the big room and working together on the project really busts a lot of those barriers. So.
And I think we want to work together. I mean, when you work together collaboratively with a contractor, there's nothing better on earth. I mean, it really makes innovation and solution finding so much better. I mean,
yeah, it works.
We all recognize it. Okay.
It just works.
And we, from an owner side, want to see that collaboration as well, because we know that it has value to us. That's going to reduce costs. It's going to reduce conflicts. It's going to reduce arguments in the end. Yeah.
I don't see anybody jumping up.
Oh.
Omar, Gord, you want to come up after Omar and ask a question?
Being assigned questions.
So I hear the term IPD being bandied about. Now, one of our clients, York University, they build it as, they still want the same old contract, but they want more concepts of IPD integrated into it. So obviously, Ellis Dawn, when we come in, yeah, I'm totally plugging us right now. Ellis Dawn's awesome, by the way.
He's gone.
When we come in, we want to come in as early as possible. And we want to work with the design to apply our constructability analysis, essentially, to help bring the design to a better level than if we were not there to begin with. And that's part of an IPD approach. Now, you're looking at it from a construction standpoint. From a contract standpoint, my question is, what are you doing outside of that to try and push this agenda forward? So you're talking about, we got to change the contract, we got to go more towards IPD. But beyond that, even without that happening, what are you guys trying to do to make that happen?
I created a software solution that allows that, and I'm selling it. So that's the best I can do right now. I'm allowing people to actually work together, creating.
That's it?
Yeah. I mean, people have tried to do it before. They haven't That's me. That's what I do. I'm sorry. It's not my fault.
From our perspective, obviously, I talked about the Center Block. It's one of the largest construction projects in the country, if not the largest. It is an IPD delivery model. So, and the contractor is at the table, was hired at the exact same time as the consultant and so on, and they're all co-located. So it's there. It's actually being used.
But it's not a multi-party agreement.
It's a bit of a hybrid, but it's pretty close, I would say. Yeah.
Just from our perspective, the project we're about to run, it is true IPD, and I think our biggest challenge was busting some of the thresholds for approvals to get into a contract like that, and becoming more informed on what it means to our internal team, how we have to interact as an owner as part of this new agreement. Like, we're in there with the designer and constructor, and it scares, quite frankly, the bejesus out of me right now, because we haven't quite got there yet. But I'm really eager to start getting in the big room and start informing ourselves, working interactively to get something at hand, a true handover to us, the owner. It's all about becoming more informed and getting the right information flowing back at closeout, so we can actually run our asset and also deal with a highly secure environment too. So, knowledge sharing.
Thank you.
So we have time for one more question. Ms. Megan Benge, I guess. Do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Oh, sure. I'm teaching with Susan at Algonquin, and I work for PSPC as one of the BIM leads under the technical services. We do some of the research and development for PSPC. My question is actually for Jordan. I wanted to ask what you think is the biggest barrier, whether you think it's putting something in everyone's hands or if it's helping the user understand the developer's perspective. Because I find that the user is restricted by the developer's decisions in software development, and if we don't understand what you're doing, we can't tell you how to do it better.
Yeah. So the approach we had is actually not an approach as a software company. We approached it as a contractor, actually, based on the background of some of the people in the group. We started in the naval industry, and the naval industry had a specific problem to resolve, which actually exists also in the AEC industry. Based on their feedback, so the best way I can describe it, the technology allows us to do something that is amazing and great, but where it becomes magic is that we were able to answer their own questions. So the platform is completely changeable for anybody depending on your needs. We do not code anything for any one of our customers. It is very, very rare and very seldom that we're going to develop something for a specific customer. Most of the time we're going to develop something, it's going to be how are everybody else going to use it? What do we need to do to make sure everybody else uses it? What we've discovered is that the same way a shipyard is using a welder, you're going to have another industry using the same kind of model. So they start to answer the same question, and as we move forward, people in the trades and upward tell us, oh, I'm doing this with that software, and that software, and I have issues in the middle of them, and I have to do that. I'm like, what are you trying to achieve? And they tell us what they want to achieve, and suddenly, oh, those are big things that I know we are doing right, is that people use our tool in ways I've never imagined. They're not limited by the way we've designed it. We've designed it to be unlike an heavy solution that you would find by Autodesk or Dassault or Hexagon or Bentley system. Our solution is very light, and it's really meant to be creative. On a section of it, it's almost like a piece of art where you decide how you use it. I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to tell you what kind of feature it can do. I can tell you how fast I can load something. But the way you're going to use it is going to depend on everything about you. And that changes every single time. And we haven't yet found a customer that says, oh, I don't know how to use it. The biggest challenge for everybody we meet is how do we leverage the most of it? And we found that a lot of people, and this is our challenge right now, they see so many avenues to use it, they're having a really hard time going after one of them. They want to do all of them. And this is not, it's not the nature of because we're good software developer, it's because we're artists in a way where we're like, oh, you want to see the model anywhere? You go see the model anywhere. You want all the data with it? Here is all the data with it. You want to attach it any way, shape, or form you want. That doesn't matter to me. You do what you want. You create it the way you want. The process that we follow is not our process. We don't actually have a singular process in the platform. It is going to be the process of our customer.
Great. You have good timing. My 10 minutes went off right then, too.
Yay!
So, Ezio Demilo, Paul Husser, Emmanuel Van Rooten, John Hale, James Hayes, and Jordan Jansen, thank you very much for sitting on our panel. Really appreciate your viewpoints, taking the time to describe from your experience those questions. Let's give a round of applause to our panel. So any wrap-up? Oh, perfect.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Thank you, everybody. That brings the evening or the afternoon, early evening to a close. On behalf of CANBIM and our partners, I want to thank you for being here. I do want to acknowledge again some of the people that made it possible, aside from Jerry. He's already got his accolades. Thanks, Jerry. All our presenters, of course, everybody up here today, everybody that was double booked and had to leave, and others that are sitting around. Thank you for contributing as much as you did. Algonquin College Construction Research Center, thank you. Carleton Immersive Media Studio, SIMS, and of course, thank you to all of you, our audience. Our supporting sponsors, again, Building Smart Canada, Ellis Dawn, NOR, and S8 Inc. Without you, obviously, being part of this team, probably would not have been this successful. And last minute switch because of, again, the strike. We still feel it was very successful, went very well, and we're glad that we could be here at Carleton. Hopefully next year we could do a 2-day thing, 1 day at Algonquin, 1 day at Carleton. Thank you very much. Again, Tyler and Vivian are about to become the most popular people in the building. They have the drink tickets. Enjoy, let's network. Hopefully we'll see you again next year or somewhere in between. Thank you very much.